Hey everyone, it's Steve here from CG Geek, and today we're going to be getting our hands a little bit dirty and simulating a massive amount of slime within Blender. So we're going to have a real-time result that can be viewed just like this in Blender 2.8. So you can see here if I hit play, we have a massive amount of slime being poured over our scene, burying our poor Suzanne monkey head, and it's pretty fun. So we're going to be using some unique fluid settings, going through and changing some of Blender's fluid simulation settings to really get this gooey, icky, sort of slime-like look, and then adding some materials and stuff to finish it off to really sell the effect. It should be pretty easy, should only take about 20 minutes, and will be something that even a beginner can follow along with. So I hope you guys are excited to jump in, and let's do it. But before we start making a mess, I'd like to thank Skillshare for sponsoring this video. If you want to learn how to practically do anything out there, from music production to game design to even running your own personal business, you should definitely check out Skillshare and benefit from the thousands of courses they have taught by talented professionals. Oh, and by the way, they also have fun craft videos on how to create actual slime. There's so many cool things that can be learned from Skillshare's website, so why not try it today with 2 free months when you use the link in the description. And don't wait, as only the first 500 viewers get this offer. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm using Blender 2.8 beta, but any version of Blender 2.8 on should work perfectly fine. And let's just go ahead and get right into it. So I'm going to use our default cube here, and I'm going to scale it up to about 5 so we have a nice sort of room to work in. And I'm going to hit tab and just grab this along the Z axis to pull it straight up by hitting G and Z. So it's sitting right along the cube there. If you hit control, it will snap right to it. And now all I'm going to do is go to our face select mode, grab that top face by right-clicking on it, and hit X and delete faces. With that gone, I'm going to also delete these 2 faces here. So just selecting both of those, holding Shift, and then going X and deleting those faces. Perfect. We can grab these edges here by choosing the edge select then, this one and this one. And again, holding Shift and then doing a G and Z to grab it along the Z axis. We can pull it down to be the proper height. You might also want to flip the normals if you get some weird shading issues. That can just be done by hitting Tab, selecting everything, and then we can just hit F3 and search for normals. You'll see right away that we have flip normals right here, and you just want to choose that, as it will flip the normals in case you had some weird shading. So now we need something to bury in slime. So I'm just going to use the Suzanne monkey head, as it's a kind of a cool, unique shape and is quick to get going. So I'm just going to go Shift A, add a mesh, and then monkey head. So go ahead and add that right there. I'm going to grab it along the Z axis by hitting G and Z, just to kind of pull it up so it's sitting on our floor. And then if you hit R twice, you can rotate it around the gimbal. So you can get the nice rotation to have it kind of look like it's sitting right on the floor here. I'm going to scale it up a bit bigger and then grab it again by hitting G and Z so it's sitting nicely on the floor. And that should work perfectly fine for this simulation. So next, it's kind of cool to have more than just one object to bury in slime. So what I did is I made a few basic tables. To do this, it's very simple. We're just going to put our cursor over here where we want that table to be. Go Shift A, and we're going to add a mesh and a cube. This cube can just be scaled down a little bit, and then scaled along the Z axis by hitting S and Z. We'll scale it down till it's nice and thin, and then hit G and Z again so we can pull it up. And now if I tab into edit mode, we can add a few legs to this basic square table. But I want to make it wider without making it taller. So what I can do is I can go scale and then Shift Z, and then it won't scale along the Z, but it will scale it along the X and the Y. So S and Shift Z will allow me to scale it up a bit fatter. And with that done, all we need to do for some legs is we can just duplicate this table here by hitting Shift D, scale it along the Shift Z, except making it much smaller, so we have a nice leg, as you can see right there. And now all I have to do is extrude this leg down, or scale it down for that matter. We can just grab that bottom face there by using the face select and grabbing it, and then hit G and Z and just pull it all the way down to the ground. So something like that, and we have a nice leg. We should pull that top face down a little bit as well. Now I'm just going to grab that leg by hovering over it with the face select on and hitting L, so we grab that entire leg, and you can see it's a little bit too long. So I'm just going to scale it along the Z a bit, and then grab it along the Z, and we have it about the right length. Now if I go top view and hit Z, and then go over to wireframe, I can see right through the mesh and see where that leg is placed, and I can go ahead and move it into the corner, and then just hit Shift D and move it into every corner. Something simple like that, and we have a basic table to pour some slime on. So there you have it. If we go back to hitting Z in solid, you can see we have a simple table right there. It can be scaled down a little bit more. Now that we have one table, you can simply duplicate it and put a few of them across your scene. I'm just going to rotate this a little bit along the Z so we have it kind of sitting there nice. And then I'm going to go to top view and shift D it and pull it over to this side, and we can rotate it again nicely over there. And you can see we have a few tables to pour some slime on. I'll duplicate it one more time. We'll put it behind him as we have room for more tables. And let's start our fluid simulation. So first off, before you do a fluid simulation, you need a domain. It's basically a cube that everything will happen inside of. So this is essentially just going to contain all the fluid, so all of the simulation will happen within inside this cube. So I'm just going to go Shift S, cursor to world origin, so it puts it in the middle there, and then Shift A and add in a new cube. We're going to scale this cube up pretty large until it reaches about the edges of our walls here. So scale up to about the same size as that, which would be a 5 on your keyboard if you wanted to just do it that way. And then scale it along the Z, because we don't need it to be quite so tall. And then grab it along the Z so it's kind of sitting on the floor there. Something like that, maybe just a little bit larger than your interior, is all you need. And then if you hit 5 on your number pad and scroll in, you can see that inside the cube, you can see you have everything that will be in the simulation, and that's exactly what you want. Let's set up some fluid, some objects to emit fluid into our domain now. So to do this, we're just going to scroll in here, and I'm going to use another monkey head actually to emit the fluid. So I'm just going to put my cursor up here on the top of our cube, go Shift A, and add in a monkey head. We can scale this one down a bit smaller, as it's just going to be used to emit the fluid. I'm just rotating around here like before so you can see what it looks like. And now what I'm going to do is over in our side settings here, let me make a little bit more room. I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom where we have our physics settings. So go ahead and choose physics right there. And we're going to choose fluid. So choose fluid, and then under the fluid type here, you're going to want to choose inflow. And this is basically going to be an object that continues to add fluid into the scene. So basically that's all you have to do, and you're going to have fluid being poured into your domain now. The one thing I do want to change while I'm here is if I give it a little bit of inflow velocity, it will cause more fluid to be added into the scene, and it will kind of shoot that fluid out a little bit. So right here I have the Z-axis, and I want to put -2 in here, so it's emitting fluid downwards. So you can see if I hit G and Z that's going down, if you look at the numbers up in the top corner there, and I want the fluid to be coming down. So I'll give it a -2. Okay, now the next step is to make it so that these obstacles will collide with the fluid. Right now it would just fall right through our Suzanne head here, but we want it to fall on top of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to select our Suzanne head there, and over here we're going to choose fluid again, but this time the type is going to be obstacle. Now there's one setting that we want to change, and this will help it make it look like slime, and that's going to be choosing the slip amount. We want this to be no slip. Basically, if it's a slippery surface, it's just like you'd imagine, the fluid would fall off of it, but because this is slime, we want it to stick to the obstacles. So choosing no slip will have the fluid just kind of pile up on top of it and look much more like slime. So we're going to go ahead and give the same settings to these tables, just choosing fluid, obstacle, and then changing the slip type to no slip. So now that we have our obstacles set up and our fluid emitting, we have to change the fluid settings itself. So I'm going to grab our domain object here and zoom out of it now because we don't have to be inside there. And I'm going to choose fluid, and this is where all of the fluid settings end up being. It's in your domain settings. So I'm going to go type and choose domain. And if I scroll down here, you can see we have some resolution settings, we have some time settings, and we have some baking settings and stuff down here as well. Let's start off by leaving the resolution as it is because we don't need it to be high res as we're kind of working out the settings. And let's start off with the time settings here. So the time settings here are in seconds, and it's basically how long the simulation should be in your timeline. So you can see here that we have 250 frames by default, and we'll just leave that. So right now we would want this to be approximately 10 seconds. If you figure that we're running at 24 FPS, 10 seconds would be about 250 frames, approximately. So we'll set that to 10, and that'll give us a nice sort of realistic flow. If you're going for like slow motion or something, you could make this a smaller value, but that's all we want for this is 10. We want it to be real-time motion, I guess you could say. So we'll leave that as it is. and we'll scroll down to our boundary. Our boundary settings, we also want to be no slip. So go ahead and change that. It's basically the same as the collision settings. And then the other thing is the surface smoothing. I found that I wanted to turn this off because if I wanted to add some smoothing, I could do it later with a modifier. So go ahead and turn that off to 0. Now the main settings that we're going to want to change to really affect the way the fluid looks and interacts with the scene is going to be in the world and the viscosity. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, but in these two settings, we're going to be able to kind of affect the way the fluid really looks. Now first off, if we want to be able to change these settings right here, it's currently using the settings from the scene. And that's okay for the gravity and stuff, but I want to be able to affect the size in meters here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to our scene settings right here, and then over here in the units, I want to scroll down, and under the unit system, I want to change that to none. If I change that to none, when I go back into the fluid settings here, you can see I can change this setting to what I want. And this is basically the world size in meters. So if you want to figure how large this room is, I would say probably a few meters, but I'm going to go on a little bit on the smaller side and just give it a world size of about 2 meters, saying this is about a small 6-foot room or so. And that's going to be from one end to the other. You can make it bigger. Maybe I'll go 3, make it 9 feet. And that'll just give us the real world scale. Now, you can also see that this has to be scaled up a little bit more as the monkey head up here is not completely inside of it. And we want everything that's fluid to be completely inside of our cube. So I'm just scaling it up a little bit more along the Z-axis there. So now the last setting here, I can collapse that, is going to be the viscosity, or whatever. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that again. But in here you have your base and your exponent. Now I've rendered out a few examples here of what the difference is between them. But the main setting that's going to make it look less like fluid and more like slime is going to be the exponent here. Now you can see in the slide that I have here the difference between them, and you can see that when the exponent is set to 6, it splashes and looks a lot like water. But if it's set down all the way to something like 0, it looks very slimy, like it all sticks together, and will give you a much better look for slime. So I found that this setting works best as 0, and the base kind of does the same thing, but you can see there's a little bit less difference in the slides here between the values with the base. So I just found going with something like a 4 gave it a nice look. You can kind of think of the base as sort of like the thickness. It will be a bit of a thicker fluid if you make it larger, and if it's smaller, it's a little bit runnier, I guess you could say. So 4 is a pretty thickness like we want for our slime, I guess. So choosing about a 4 is going to give you a pretty good slime simulation, I would say. So with all that said and done, we're ready to start baking and seeing what this looks like. So I'm going to go up here to bake, drop that down, and we'll just start by hitting bake. You'll have to have your project saved before you can bake, so make sure you do that. And then just start baking. And you can see here that we have our basic simulation with slime pouring down. And if you look at the simulation, you can see that it's already behaving like slime, where it's like piling up on top of each other instead of pouring out like water would. And that's because of those settings that we changed there. So we have the simulation, and it's looking like slime. So there we have it. We have the settings we want. It's looking pretty cool. But before we go ahead and make this high quality and stuff, let's give it a little bit of a material so we can really see how it looks as slime. So first off, I'm going to want our slime to be smooth. So you want to hit F3 so you can search, and then just search for smooth, and you want to choose shade smooth. This will kind of smooth out your simulation and make it look even more slimy. That's looking pretty cool. Now let's give our slime a material. So first off, let's go ahead and click the rendered view here in Eevee, and you can see we have a basic rendering here with this lamp controlling the only light in the scene. We'll add a few more lamps in a moment, but let's first set up the slime material. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that slime right there. I'm going to go up into the corner here and split our window so we can open up a material editor. So over here, I'm going to change our window from a viewport to the shader editor. And if I hit N to close off our tab here, you can see we don't have any shader added in yet. But if I go over to our material settings right over here, just go ahead and select that, click New Material, and you can see that we have a principled shader added to our material here. And if we change the color here of the base color to something like a nice slimy green, you can see that the color changes right there. There's a few things that we can do to make this look even more like slime that are really easy. So the first one is going to be to give it a little bit more shine. So by taking the roughness down, you can see you get a little bit more of a wet look. along here, and that looks cool. And you can also add a little bit of the clear coat option in your principled shader here, as that will add even more sharp reflections that kind of give it that slimy look. So go ahead and give it about a 0.3 on the clear coat and take the roughness down to about a 0.3 as well. So with that set up, we have a sharper looking reflection. Now the last thing is to give it some subsurface scattering and then a little bit of bump to make it look really slimy. So the subsurface scattering, I'm going to choose right here. We're going to give it a little bit of a yellow, orange or green, I should say, yellow-green, to give it a little bit of a variation from the base color. And then if we do go to the subsurface radius here, these are basically RGB values, and this is going to kind of be what the light looks like when it penetrates. Right now it's mostly red, so I'm going to give it a bit more green right here. 0.2 would be the green value. So go ahead and boost that up to about a 1.1 or so. So we get more green in our slime there. And then we can just choose the subsurface amount, crank it up here. You'll see it change a little bit, but not a whole bunch until we go up here to our render settings, and we have to choose subsurface scattering right there. That allows subsurface scattering to work within Eevee, and you can see that starts to look a lot slimier. Again, you can control the amount then right here, whatever looks good. Somewhere around the middle, I think about a 0.6 looks pretty good, and you get that cooler looking shading with the subsurface scattering. While we're over here, you can go ahead and enable screen space reflections as well, as that will give you some of the reflections that you see here and make the scene look even prettier. Ambient occlusion can also be added in right there, and then we'll wait to add anything else until later. Okay, so now let's add that bump that I was talking about. So to do this, let's give ourselves even a little bit more room here. I'm going to add just a basic texture. So Shift A, texture, and I'm going to choose the noise texture. Drop it in right there, and then I'm going to drop it right into a color ramp. So we're going to go ahead and converter color ramp by hitting Shift A and adding that in. And I'm just going to drop the color into the factor here. And now the easiest way to view the changes that we're going to be making to these nodes is to actually enable the Node Wrangler add-on. So you can go to Edit, down to Preferences, and let me just bring this over here so you can see it. I'm going to go to Add-ons, right down here in the drop-down, and then just start searching for Node, and you'll see Node Wrangler right there. Hit that checkbox to enable it, and we're ready to go. So with that enabled, you can hold Control and Shift, and then left click on your node, and you can see exactly what it's looking like through that node. I can see here that I need to bring the black and white values up before I can really see what that texture node is doing here. So I'm just bringing the black and white values up a bit, so we have something like that. And you can see that it's a very large texture. I want it to be a lot smaller, so I'm going to give it a scale of about 20. You can see now that we have that texture, it's kind of wrapped all around there. It looks pretty cool. We're going to give it a bit more detail, so let me hit that to about a 5 on the detail, and then the distortion is going to be really what gives it that slimy effect. So go ahead and crank the distortion all the way up to something like a 6 or a 7. We'll go about 7, and that's going to really give us sort of that slimy effect. You can also play around with the scale now to determine how large you want the slime to look, but somewhere around a 20 to a 25 works best. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go Shift A, add in a vector bump node, and we'll connect this to control the height of that bump node. So if I plug this now into the normal, you can see, as soon as this loads here, that we have that bump added to our slime. And it looks pretty cool. It's a bit too strong right now though. So I'm going to take the strength down a bit. Right around a 0.4 is what looks best. And you can see with that, we're getting some cooler looking results. And now what you can do to control the amount of it is to control how bright the white is and how bright the black is. So by taking this down from 100% white to be a little bit more black, you can see that we get some more reflections in there and it's looking pretty cool. So I'm just going to take this color down to be somewhere around the middle there, and then I'm going to take the black and make it a little bit white. And this is just something you can kind of play around with to get the look you're going for on your slime. But you can see we have that bump working now, and we also have that slime kind of looking real slimy. It's pretty cool. We might make the second value just a little bit brighter, and then you have a nice looking slime material. You can also use this to control the roughness on your node, and it just gives you a little bit more control over what the roughness looks like. And that's looking pretty cool. We might want to take the strength down even a little bit more on this bump here, maybe down to about a 0.3, but that's looking pretty great. And if we add some more lights, it will look really great. You can also add the normal to the clear coat normal there, as it will affect that then as well. But that's looking pretty cool. So let's go ahead and give our monkey head a material as well. Just jump over to our materials here, go new, and he can just have a basic sort of red material here. Something that looks kind of cool. A little bit of a reddish orange brown. And then let's go ahead and give our tables a material as well. Just adding new material and changing the base color here to be something like a brown color. So we're going to go kind of a darker brown there. And this is material 3. So you can just go ahead and shift click these two tables and then click this one last, holding shift, and then go Control L, make links, materials, and that will make them all brown. The last thing would be a material for our background here. So we can give that just a nice sort of light blue material to work in this case. And that looks pretty cool. Now, all we have to do is add in a little bit more lighting. So first off, I can close this off now. Let's go ahead and break that down. I'm going to change our spot lamp here to be a sun lamp. So I'm going to go to our light settings here and change it to sun. And then I'm going to take the energy down a bit. I'm going to go just around about a 0.5. And you can rotate it to be whatever angle you're looking for. And you can see that you have some kind of sharp, harsh shadows now. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place my cursor back along the wall there and go Shift A, add in a light and a point light. We can take the energy down on this a bit as well, down to about a 2 or a 1. Between 2 and 1 worked well. And we're just going to add these lights around our scene. So I'm just going to duplicate it and pull one over here. And you can see that as I add more lights, you get more of those specular highlights showing up on your slime here. And that just looks really cool to make it look even slimier. So I add one more light over here. So the coolest thing you can do with the slime right now is affect how it's poured. And to do that, all we have to do is animate this Suzanne head up on top here, which is affecting where the slime is coming from. So I'm going to jump to frame 1 along our timeline here. And I'm going to choose the automatic keyframe insertion option right here, meaning that whenever we move our object, it will add a keyframe for that specific location. So if I hit top view right now, I have our Suzanne head, and I'm just going to double tap R to rotate it a bit, and we'll start back on this table. And I'm just going to jump about 50 frames ahead, and I'm going to grab the Suzanne head to be right across the monkey head there. So we'll go right over to there, and then I'm going to jump about 50 frames again and hit G and pull it right over to here. And every time I do this, you can see we have a new keyframe inserted in our timeline. So I'm going to jump about another 40 or 50 frames, and we'll pull it over to this table, and then jump again, and we can pull it back to the front. Jump again about another 50 frames or so, pull it back to the back here, and then one more time to the back, and we'll pull it across the front. So if I was to scrub through here now, you can just see our Suzanne head is moving all around our scene. And this is going to be great because it's going to be dropping slime everywhere the head goes now. So all we have to do is jump back to frame 1, grab that domain object there. I'm going to go down to our fluid settings again in our physics tab here. And I'm just going to change the final resolution to be a bit higher. I'm going to go about 120, as that will look nice. I can save our project real quick by Control S. Yeah, we're going to choose the render display and the viewport to both be final. If I change it to final, you can see it gets higher quality because it's going to be showing the highest resolution baked and not just a preview of it. And with that done, we should be ready to go ahead and bake our whole simulation. So we set the resolution to about 120. You can go higher, you can go lower if you have a slow computer you don't want to take very long. This should only take a minute or two at 120. And so I'm just going to scroll down to bake and click bake. Okay, so that only took about a minute or so, and you can see right here in our loading bar that the fluid simulation has just finished. And if I jump to frame 1 here, pick a cool camera view, and hit play, you can see we have our fluid just pouring all over our monkey head here, and it looks very slimy. So it's pretty cool, and you have your large scale slime simulation. That's going to do it, guys. You can see the strength might be a little bit too strong still on that bump map, so you can take that down a little bit if it was looking too strong for your liking. But there you have it. That's how you make a slime simulation with Blender 2.8. So something else that you could do to add even a little bit extra to this animation if you wanted to is, for example, you could have this table animated to move while the slime hits it. So you could jump back right here, and right as the slime starts to hit it, you would grab that table, and then you could scrub along a little bit as the slime kind of falls on it, and then hit G and Shift Z to pull it along the Z axis, and just kind of pull it out and then rotate it along the Z a little bit as well. And you can see now when we play the simulation back, when that fluid hits it, it kind of pushes it. It just kind of adds to the scene a little bit. So that's a way you could kind of have the fluid interact with the objects even more by doing a little bit of keyframing. So the last thing is, like I mentioned earlier when we were baking our simulation, if you want to kind of smooth this out even more, you could go to your modifiers, add a modifier, and choose the smooth modifier. And this will give you just smoother results, so you can kind of play around with the amount of smoothing you want. If it was a little bit of a rough simulation, this one doesn't actually look too bad, but a little bit of smoothing, you can hit repeat once or twice, and then you don't want to go too far because you lose a little bit of detail, but right around about a 0.7 with a repeat value of 1 or 2 or 3, I should say, can kind of smooth out some of the sharper looking edges here. And you can see with and without it here, kind of just smooths that out and gives you a little bit better looking results. So you can do that, and then you can still play it back in real time, smoothed out, and this is just a way of having control of the smoothing later on. So I hope you guys had some fun with this tutorial. If you create a cool simulation, go ahead and share it in the description, or you can send it to me on Twitter or Instagram. Links in the description. And I'd like to thank Skillshare one more time for sponsoring this video. If you guys want to get those 2 free months, go ahead and use that link in the description. That'll do it for me though, guys. I will see you in a future video. So talk to you later. Bye!